You are listening to Product and Growth Show.
Hi everyone, this is Product and Growth Show, and today we speak English because our guest does not speak Russian, Ukrainian, and English is the language to use for today. As usual, we have myself here, Yaroslav, and Pasha.
Hey everyone.
And like I said, we have a really cool guest here today, Daniel Marhel. Daniel, why don't you make a quick introduction about yourself?
Hi guys. My name is Daniel, currently leading product at Printify. And to give a brief introduction, Printify is essentially a platform that connects merchants on one side, merchants on platform like Etsy, WooCommerce, Shopify, eBay, and so on, and suppliers, which we call print providers, on the other side. So how we operate essentially, let's say you want to start selling, let's say, phone cases with your unique design. You come to Printify, you upload your design. We create what we call mockups, which is like realistic representation of your products. That's automatically 3D generated. You sync them, you upload them to, let's say, your Shopify store, and then, for instance, Yaroslav comes to your store, like them, buy that. At this moment, we pull all the order information, buy them, we pull all the order information, we process it, and we send it to our list of printing partners, which are situated all around the world. And they basically take it, they print it, they package it, and ship it directly to Yaroslav. So it's essentially like a drop shipping thing. And we started in 2005, and right now, this year, we plan to hit 100 million in revenue.
You said 2005?
Awesome.
Like 15
2015.
Years?
My bad.
Oh,
2015.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's not the first iteration, right? That's not the product you have started with.
Not really. So we obviously were in what we call print on demand business all the time. So we started in 2015. I think it was September, something like that. I wasn't with the company back then, but I know our CEO and our main founder. And we started pretending to be printing company ourselves. So essentially you came to Printify, you did all the same thing, but instead of selecting the partner, we pretended that we are printing ourselves. And we started pretty okay with this, but as you can imagine, print on demand, it's a custom production. So sometimes fuck up happen, like there are misprints, there are shipping issues, and as everything was dealing with e-commerce in real world. And then clients started complaining, like, guys, you have this issue on your floor, go and fix it. But we really couldn't because we were just pretending. And the idea came that we probably need to shift to the different business model and become more transparent. And it actually took us almost like whole 2016 to rebuild the product and to pivot it. So the whole 2016 was actually spent rebuilding the product in the current iteration, in the platform iteration, where we decided to be completely transparent. We allowed you to pick the print provider. We were completely transparent in where you're printing, with whom you're printing, and so on. And it was a risky move because theoretically, then why would you use Printify if you can go directly to the printing partner? But nevertheless, we launched it in 2017. I think it was February. And since then, we've seen pretty much tremendous growth, like 3 to 5 times X a year.
So on a scale from 0 to 10, how difficult was it to make the pivot decision?
It was quite difficult, I would say. Again, I joined slightly after we did the pivot, but from what I know, it was let's put it like this. It wasn't a consensus, but it was commitment to do this because the growth just wasn't there when we were pretending to be a printing provider. So our CEO and our COO back then, they said like, yes, it is a risky move, but we are committed to making it. Hopefully answered your question.
Yep.
And
So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
we have to raise a hand, right? Anyways, my question was the following. How did you know you're achieving product market fit after you have pivoted to another business model?
So the product market fit was actually before the pivot. Like we knew that the market was there. So to put it a bit in a bigger perspective, like T-shirts as a thing in US, it's a pretty much I think an average American buys, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 3 T-shirts a month. So we knew that the demand for T-shirts was there. We also knew that the demand for custom T-shirts was there because before there were quite a few companies in the same field. There was like a T-Launch, and there was Teespring, and so on. They were pretty much doing the same thing, but they were more like a marketplace model. So they had a B2C facing marketplace. So there wasn't really a question of whether there is a demand. The question was how to properly frame the product so that it scales better. And we actually, when our CEO James started, I think the first month's revenue was something close to 100,000. So it took off really quickly, and we started as a Shopify app. That's quite important thing. But it just didn't scale. It didn't grow as fast as we needed to. And then the main thing was that the retention wasn't there, and people were complaining about like there are quality issues maybe, or some product issue, and why you guys not fixing it. And we just couldn't. So that was the decision that, hey, we need to switch to the platform model. So the only thing that has changed is, and that's quite important, that we became transparent. We actually opened up and we said, like, guys, you can pick from a list of partners. Some of them are better, some of them are worse, some has higher price, some has lower price, but it's your decision, and you're committing to, you're making a decision, so it's your choice. And the demand itself was there, but once we opened up, we just saw that people who actually willing to take the risk, and the entrepreneurs that want to have more control, they prefer this way instead of just working with one particular partner, instead of just trying to pick whatever, like in terms of pricing, in terms of quality, what worked for them, doing some test and then committing. And if something goes wrong, they can always switch to another partner. And that's the beauty of the platform, that you have, I think right now we have around 30, but no, it's actually more than 30 partners, but we plan to have over 100 by the end of the year, and we plan to add more and more. And you can switch between them, you can mix them, you can fulfill T-shirts from one partner, which is, for instance, specializes on T-shirt, and you can fulfill mugs from another, or you can fulfill, I don't know, canvas from the third one. And that's also the beauty with that. Partners usually specialize on a certain thing. They scale their production around certain type of product. Yeah, so that's, I guess, the main differences.
Cool.
And how do you currently balance between product challenges and growth challenges? Because it sounds like you are growing 3 times year over year, right?
Yeah, so in terms of revenue, we are pretty much, so the first year we grew, when we pivoted, we grew 5x, and the next were 3x, and this year looks like maybe even a bit more than 3x. It's always a challenge. As one of our investors said, growth solves all challenges. So until you're growing, everything else doesn't matter. You can just throw money at the problem, but at certain scale, it's no longer feasible, I guess. Up until now, we were always prioritizing, we'll call them growth features. So it's better onboarding, retention features, and so on and so on. But as you might know, the growth features usually are short, like they do not influence your core value proposition. So starting from last year, we basically separated the teams that are focused on the growth features or like optimization stuff, and teams that are working on a core value proposition. And then it became quite easier because you know that, okay, that the teams are just focusing on optimization of existing value proposition. And then there is separate teams that are working just delivering more value to in the long term. And it sort of works fine. It's always, obviously, we're still a startup. We are like, I think right now we are about 150 people. And it's always a challenge, especially in this relatively early stage. There's some emergency, and then you have to pull people from the growth of product to throw them at some emergency and so on. It's not like everything is smooth, but it sort of works for us.
And can you give an example of the growth feature for Printify? I'm just, because you mentioned the growth features and those that influence retention are prioritized, and I'm currently trying to think of, okay, what is that thing that they are doing?
So growth features are something like a referral program, or like a coupon system, or an affiliate program, or better onboarding or streamlined onboarding. Those are what we consider growth feature because they do not influence the core value proposition, right? The core value proposition is fulfilling of orders. Then the product features would be like a better mock-up generator with more advanced feature, like you could maybe create text instead of just uploading images, or like a better order management where you don't have to contact support. You can do it all of it via like self-service interface, or just more suppliers, because more suppliers means better selection, and it also means more unique products. That's also a core value proposition. But this one is tricky because more suppliers, more product also means that it drives growth as well.
Okay, cool.
By the way, I wanted to take a step back and talk a little bit about the early days. So I remember that Printify being a part of 500 startups back in the days. And I'm not sure if you've been with the company that days, but I'm just curious how this experience influenced their, I would say, development of the company.
I haven't been during that day. I joined just pretty much immediately afterwards. But I know what 500 startup brought to the company, and actually being part of the 500 startup have, I think it's Growth Hell Week or Marketing Hell Week, something like that. So they have part of their, I think it's 2 months program. 1 week is basically from early morning to the evening. They do the very high-level growth program, like everything from how to do experimentation and acquisition channels and sales and maybe product development to drive growth and so on. Anyway, so I've been part of that, but apart from that, so 500 startups, first and foremost, it's obviously like a stamp of quality. I mean, if you are part of 500 Startup YC or Techstars, it opens up a lot of doors. It's essentially like a branding thing. If you have it, it's way easier to start conversation with like contacts that you need to get, maybe investors, partnerships, and so on and so on. So it gives a lot of weight in initial stages. Also, well, 500 startups brought us, as far as I know, and it is how we met our first big angel investor in San Francisco, and through him we actually expanded our current angel network, which is quite substantial. Like we have guys from YouTube and Facebook and Google and so on and so on. But it was 500 startup that opened doors to meet with our first angel investor. And obviously, I wouldn't say it's only 500. Our CEO, James, did a lot of legwork to actually get him on board and everything, but that wouldn't probably be possible without 500 startups. So those two things already, like the branding and getting all the context already probably would be enough. Then you get obviously pre-seed round, and couple of more smaller things that might not be obvious on the surface level. You get the 500 startup family, so you get a lot of contacts with other like batch participants or even other batches. You get a lot of good deals on different software, and then like server credits and everything. Like you get up to 95% discounts and stuff like Intercom and HubSpot, and like sometimes even hundreds of thousands of credits for servers like in AWS or in Google Cloud. So it's actually quite a good package. I mean, I know that in Europe some accelerators deliver close to that experience, but you are in San Francisco, you get all the contacts, you get quite a few doors opened for you, and then you get all the smaller benefits. So it's a great thing to be a part of.
It sounds like too good to be true.
Out of curiosity, why then have you decided to stay in Riga? I believe Riga is the place.
Yes. Originally, I probably should be from an other standpoint. So why didn't we start in US? We are officially a US company. We are Delaware registered, and we have officially a small office in San Francisco as well. But there is one but. You can imagine the cost of, let's say, salary cost of one software developer in San Francisco versus one software developer in northern/eastern Europe. They are not comparable. That's quite a big reason. I would say that actually helped us to grow faster because in San Francisco, we probably wouldn't be able to hire as many people as fast for the revenue we were generating back in the early days. That was the main reason. Plus, both of our, three of our founders, all of them are from Latvia. Two of them obviously spent a significant amount in US. They studied in US and have quite a lot of connection there, but they're still from Latvia. So it wasn't really a hard pick, I guess.
And okay, advantages are clear. So labor costs are lower and you have some historical roots there. But what are the disadvantages of trying to build a unicorn in such a tiny city?
Well, I don't know how tiny Riga is. I think it's like 700 people, but it's compared to San Francisco or Bay Area, it's small. There are quite a lot of challenges. One challenge we are facing right now, I guess it's a challenge that everybody's facing, a lack of talent, especially lack of international talent. For instance, Tallinn, which is Estonia, they have way more already established unicorns. They have Pipedrive, they have TransferWise, they have Skype in the very early days, and now they have quite a new and upcoming startups that went through the early growth stage and then went to pretty much an enterprise stage. Like a couple of 1,000 people. In Latvia, there are not that many companies, especially in software product company, that did that, and it's really hard to hire enough both talented and experienced people to fill different roles, and that's a big challenge. So that's why right now we actually, out of I think what I mentioned, 150 people, I think that's about right. We're growing, and I think like 10 people a month. About I think 1/3, maybe now about 40% of those people are not from Latvia. So we have people from 30 countries. But they all mostly relocated.
Relocating or remote?
Most of them relocated. We have a couple of remote people in Germany and Portugal, but mostly we're relocating. Cool. This is actually an interesting discussion we can follow up, like remote versus relocation. We were very religious about relocation before the COVID. But after the COVID, everybody went remote, and so actually productivity has grown. So maybe we should stay remote. That's a separate discussion. but yeah, so the challenge is obviously like as you asked. So talent pool is a challenge. It's a big challenge. The second part is, which is sort of related to the talent pool, is the networking opportunities. Riga, as I mentioned, doesn't have as many tech companies, so there are not that many networking opportunities to bounce ideas around, to maybe learn something from your peers and so on. So that's also, I'm not saying there is no startup scene or anything, but there is no scale-up scene. So the companies that went out of the startup stage and then grew to a higher level, that's also a challenge, somewhat. Yeah, and in initial stage, it was a challenge to pitch ideas to partners, to our printing partners from Eastern Northern Europe, because for them it's like they are treating Americans a bit differently if you're coming from even from a whole Europe, not talking even about Northern Eastern Europe. So that was a challenge in about 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago. Right now, we are an established brand in the industry, and right now, more or less everybody knows us. So it's became easier now. So now it actually doesn't matter if we are coming from Europe or we would have an office in US. By now, it's pretty much the same. So, but in the early stage, coming from Europe, it was really hard to establish deals and establish deals that are preferable for us. So like price negotiation and like contract negotiation and rule negotiation was really, really tough.
Yeah, I'm just curious how well. So just to give you a bit of the context, I'm currently employed by a company that has two major locations. The one is in Kiev, the biggest one, and the second major one is in Barcelona. And when we try to hire people from the east of Europe, for instance, from Netherlands, which is a huge tech hub, even from Germany, relocating them to Barcelona, which is kind of a nice city to live in, is a challenge because it's not a tech hub. There are not that many other job opportunities, and well, frankly speaking, people are not necessarily excited about the opportunity to move there, to develop their careers. Some of them are excited because Barcelona is a nice place to stay, but not career-wise. So I'm curious, do you have these challenges when you're relocating people from the outside? Because Riga is, well, from the first glance, is not a big tech hub, and it's a little bit hard to evaluate your further opportunities after Printify, and it's a little bit hard to kind of understand if you can connect your life with that city and if you can kind of establish your professional growth there. So do you have challenges like that? And if so, how are you tackling them?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Sure. I mean, I guess this is a challenge for pretty much whole of Europe, not only Riga. For us, it's one thing that usually helps is that Baltics usually is positioned as a one region, and more or less everybody knows. Well, not everybody knows everybody, but has a very close ties between like Riga and Tallinn and Vilnius. So it's like 3 capital cities, and Tallinn obviously is way bigger hub. They have way more startups, way more technology companies, and for them it's actually way easier to relocate. But if we're talking about Riga separately, yes, if we position Riga separately, it's not as easy one, but you do not really connect only to the Riga tech scene, you connect to the Baltic tech scene, which is a bit different. In terms of how we pitch it, for us, what helps is our angel investors and our investors, because I'll be honest with you, a couple of people from Baltic said they never seen a list of investors as significant as we have, and they're not just angel investors who never pick up the phone. They're actually participating, giving advice, sometimes mentor. all of them are really successful people, so their time is very valuable, obviously, but they are not just bystanders. They usually they try to help and open a lot of doors. So that helps a lot, because Europe being Europe is cool and everything, but everybody still wants to get a better understanding how Silicon Valley operates, and most of our investors are in Silicon Valley. So that helps a lot, but also it helps that we are growing so fast that we are listed like as one of the fastest growing company in Inc. 5000, one of the fastest growing companies in Financial Times. And when people see all those press releases and plus the investors plus everything, people really want to be part of the story. And like we are, last year I think we were the fastest growing startup in San Francisco, despite having only small office there. We were number one fastest growing startup in San Francisco by Inc. 5000. So putting all this together, the pitches become a bit easier. I'm not saying it's like a cakewalk, but it becomes easier. So putting our own success plus being part of the Baltic tech scene, altogether it helps. And we relocated people from like France and Germany and Ireland and a couple of other Central European countries. Yeah, hopefully.
Interesting. And I bet this is something other startups from your region are trying to do.
Well, I don't know about other startups from our region, but yes. So there are two things. One is just relocating people and pitching them. That's one thing, but another is just growing the startup scene altogether and growing the pool of people that that are part of the community. And those are two different. So if we're talking about ourselves, and I mentioned what we do, if we're talking about the total community, then there are a lot of initiatives that are being done by us and by other participants of the community, especially most of them are on the Estonian side. I will not be lying. I think this is how Pablo Passion heard about it, that Ragnar from Pipedrive was visiting, was it in Kiev, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, they have this Live 99 thing here in Kiev, and I used to be a resident there. That's how we met, and that's how I met one of your founders.
Yeah. And I know that Tallinn has a lot of people relocated from Ukraine, for instance, but not only from Ukraine, but they are those participants from the tech community. They're putting a lot of effort to build up the brand of Baltic tech community and basically spread the word around that, hey, we have so many cool companies that are doing well, building cool products, growing fast, and so on and so on.
Let's speak about growth a little bit. So growing 3x, it's not happening just because of luck, and even with a really strong product market fit. If you could share how the teams and processes are working in Printify, and maybe if you have something to share, like a couple of scenarios that it used to be so and we changed it to that and now it's better because.
Oh man, we have changed our process and our structure so many times, and I'm with the company soon to be 3 years. I actually, now looking back, we changed a lot of things. So I joined when we were about 20-ish people, maybe even less, I don't remember. And it was pretty much everybody doing everything. I joined when there was, for me it was interesting because I joined from the big company and I was leading a lot of teams, and I joined as individual contributor essentially because I really wanted to go from the roots. But back then it was like every startup, like everybody does everything, priorities, you have way more stuff that you need to do than you have resources or time to do. So it's like a sort of organized chaos. But Yeah, so the first thing we did with the growth team, which is basically I joined to build a growth team, and we set up the basic growth stuff like the funnel, the growth model, sort of setting all the proper events, so the proper metrics, understanding where we need to focus our efforts, and so on. Well, I would call it the basic hygiene, I guess. And it wasn't anything like, it wasn't rocket science. It wasn't there. So it was a matter of just putting in the work and setting all the basic stuff, basically setting up all the basic stuff. It worked pretty well for the first year, but in the first year we grew like 5x, and in terms of people, I think we also grew like at least 3x. It was 2017. So by the beginning of 2018, there was this everybody does everything no longer worked. And so it's actually when I overtook the product and was sort of managing between growth and product at the same time. And we understood that we need to start specializing teams. It was no longer working that we have a general pool of developers, general pool of designers, and so on. So back then we established what we call 3 teams. We have demand team, platform team, and supply team. And this is not something I have invented. I think it was, I don't remember where it came from. Probably from a book called Platform Revolution. I don't remember, it doesn't matter, but it is, as far as I understand, this is how most of the marketplaces work. They have a dedicated team for demand, dedicated team for supply, and dedicated team for platform. This is a pretty common practice. So we established that, and we established a matrix model of responsibilities. So we had a head of engineering, head of product, head of design, and so on and so on. And then it's a standard cross-functional team. So you have the team. Back then we only had 3 teams. Now we have squads under those teams, and you have a functional people, and you have so people belong essentially at the same time into the function and to the operational unit, which right now for us is a squad. And we pretty much use the same model ever since. It works for us. It keeps individual squads very agile and very lean. The communication is pretty good generally. We understand how to grow those squads, and how we do it is usually if we see that one squad have too many responsibilities, then usually it means that the squad sort of splits into 2, and then we usually hire either a new product manager or a new engineering managers to sort of supplement the split out people. And it's again, it's not something we invented. It's a pretty common practice across the board. So for us, actually, to be honest, everybody asked what was the magic? I actually think there is no magic. What we did, we just did the theory that everybody is talking about very well in practice. We just followed essentially everything by the book, obviously applying common sense to it, and we did it in a good way, and it works. Actually, I think that pretty much all of the problems of our stage startups were solved. You just need to find the solutions and apply them in a proper manner using your common sense that something might not work for you, something will work for you, and document. And if you see that something is not working, you iterate, you change until you come up with a robust solution that works for you. And again, I don't believe that there are some magic one that will solve all your problems, and there is some kind of hidden framework that nobody knows about. Yeah.
Out of curiosity, how many product managers do you have now?
Let me check. 6, 7.
So it's like 1 PM for for 30 people? This is the mass.
No. It's less. I think the average size of the squad is 7 people. It's so PM, analyst, product designer, engineers. Not all of the squads have product designers. Not all of the squads have analysts, and so on and so on. Some squads are managed. So some PMs manage 2 squads, but generally it's about 3 to 7, 8 developers and per squad. So,
as you're leading product for Printify right now, I'm curious, what are your expectations for the product managers that you are hiring?
That's a ever-changing expectation, I would guess. Like when a year ago, it was completely different from what we have now. In either case, like what is a product manager? Product manager is essentially a conduit between all other functions, right? So what I'm looking for is a really good communicator, is a really good operationally excellent person, so who knows how to design the process, how to implement it, maintain it, and change it when needed. And obviously, last but not least is general product understanding, and under that you can put a lot of things. You can put like data-driven decision, empathy thinking, understanding user needs, understanding problems, how to solve them. That's like a list will go on. But that's all is in terms of skills. But what we found out, and I personally found out that what we call a skill, and this is not my quote, this is something that one of guys from TransferWise mentioned to me, is like, we call it honey badgering. So essentially a person who just sets a goal, sets like a route to this, and will never let go until it reaches that goal, he or she. All of the skills that I mentioned, you can learn, you can develop them, you can grow around them, but if you don't have the drive to deliver the great product, great experience, an objective or anything, everything else will not help you if you don't have the drive. So essentially, drive for product managers is really important. And for us, it's actually, we are looking for this drive not only for in product manager, we're looking at pretty much in every single person. But in product manager, it's really important because they are the ones who usually need to drive the team forward toward higher and higher mountains.
And in terms of their job, in terms of the previous experiences, I mean, I know there are companies that try to hire from a certain other companies. Like, for instance, if you do a marketplace, you would like to hire from Booking, or I don't know, from Uber, or companies that are doing a decent job in what you are trying to achieve. Do you have your benchmarks? Like, for instance, I want my product manager to have this or that experience, like, for instance, past entrepreneurship experience or MBA or stuff like that.
Obviously, we try to have an experience match and try to have like let's say for platform, we try to have people with engineering background because it's very technical product management. For let's say for a demand side where you have a lot of user-facing functionality, we try to look for people who had design experience or maybe some like user-facing aspects or in their career. We try to do it, and we do give some preference, but in the end, like good product managers, if they are really good, you can throw them at any problem and they will solve it. That's the main thing. And it actually doesn't matter if you used to work in a marketplace or now you're working in, theoretically a good product manager should be able to adjust pretty quickly from working in a deep tech to marketplace or to any kind of other technology. Yes, the problem you're solving is different, the approaches you're using is different, but if you're a good product manager, you should be able to learn the materials you need fast and you need to adjust and you need to become an expert really quick. And for us, it's also very important because we are changing all the time. Like the problems what we are facing are changing all the time. Like now we need people to think about how to do supply chain optimization using machine learning, right? And we don't have people who did supply chain optimization using machine learning, but somebody needs to do it. So the good product manager would probably need to be able to adjust quickly enough and start delivering on this front pretty quickly. So answering your question, yes, we try to look for people who had a right experience, but in the end, the good product manager is a good product manager. That's all I can say.
That's a good summary. Basically, one thing you've mentioned that in US, an average American buys 3 T-shirts.
Don't quote me on this, but I think this is something.
Yeah, something like that. And you mentioned US. What are the key territories for you as a business?
So there we have to, let's say, separate between the demand side and the supply side. So if we're talking about the end consumer, that I think right now it's let's say 3/3 roughly. I haven't seen the last data, but roughly 3/3 is US. And then there is Canada and Europe and everything else. We haven't been focusing on Europe that much up until recently. So this is the end consumer who actually buys a T-shirt from one of our merchants, right? If we're talking about merchants where they are located, it's a bit different story because we have obviously the majority is US based, but we also have people who are in Europe and they are having shops in US, or people who are living in Thailand and running shops from there. So it's a bit more distributed because essentially in e-commerce, and especially if you are like an e-commerce entrepreneur, you can pretty much run business from anywhere. It doesn't matter. You don't need to be located in US per se. So yes, the end consumer market majority is in US, but the merchant locations are relatively irrelevant for us.
Okay, got it.
Just out of the curiosity, what is the role of customer research in what you guys are doing, or are you purely focused at data at this point?
Oh no, we have you mean like user research?
Yep.
So this is a thing that we actually rethinking right now. So there are 3 research parts in let's say research altogether. There is market and competitor research. There is like user research, or let's call it problem research, and then there is like solution validation. So the market research and competitor research is not something our user research do. It's a different function. And then we are left with the actual problem research or discovery research and trying to validate the problem and actually validate the solution. This is where our user research comes in. So their main objective is to talk with users, well, not only talk to users, but use any kind of research techniques to either understand what problems users are facing, how severe those problems are, how big those problems are, and then pass it down to the product teams for them to actually prioritize to understand if those problems are worth solving. And there are always more problems they can solve than you have resources. I don't think any company has more resources than the problem they need to solve. And then there is a solution validation. Well, basically, once you pass the problem discovery, problem validation phase, you come up with different solutions through your ideation phase. And then the solution validation, this is sort of like a mix between, for us at least right now, between the user research and product teams themselves, and especially product designers. to understand if the solution that they came up is prototyped and decided to go for, is it worth actually pass it down to engineering to build it. So our main focus for user research is problem discovery, problem validation, and partially solution validation. Hopefully I got your question right and answered it right way.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really expect that robust answer, but anyways. Cool. Yeah, and building the product on that scale should require some failures on the way. Would you mind sharing a few?
We definitely need to hear something bad from you, because basically the way you're describing how you guys are running business, if you take notes, it's pretty much a super successful story that you could share in any book and quote and so on and so forth. What were like the bad stuff that you did?
Oh, come on. It's as I said, everything is great on paper or when you're telling people, because people always tell about the good stuff. But then, no, we did a lot of like, as I said, we changed the processes so many times. We changed the teams so many times. If we're talking about, okay. So I divide it into two parts: building the wrong stuff, and then the processes that support building the wrong stuff. So me as a head of product, my product is essentially the process that will allow teams to not make mistakes. If the team makes mistakes, then it means that our product process is wrong. It means that either we made some mistakes in product discovery or problem discovery or whatever it is, that somehow they made mistakes, because the product process itself and the product managers are there for teams to build the right stuff, so they do not actually build the wrong stuff and do not make mistakes. But that's an ideal situation. Before we actually had all the proper product process and so on, we built a lot of stuff that either took too long to build or wasn't really adopted. So you want to probably hear examples, right? So
yeah, sure.
A couple of examples would be, we have the thing called mockup generator, and it is something that you upload your design, you position it on a product, and once you position it, we create like 3D mockup, which is then you can publish to your store and so on. So there are a lot of dependency on this product because it's one of the core functionality in the product. And there was one team that sort of was, let's say, there was their objective to build a better version of it. But to build it, they then understood that there are a lot of dependencies. They need to rebuild some part of the backend and like a rendering engine and yada, yada, yada. And initially it was planned to deliver it in I think in 2 months, then it extended to like 3 months, then expanded to 4 or 5 months, 6 months. And somehow 12 months down the road, they finally delivered like a version of it, which is actually wasn't even the version that we planned it initially. And it was all part of my fault because we didn't have a robust process of how like deliverables needs to be measured, how we establish acceptance criteria and so on and so on. So anyway, long story short, after 12 months, some things was delivered, and we launched it. Obviously, we are sort of smart back then. We launch it, and we see that actually this new version drops the conversion by something like 45% compared to the old version. So we've spent 12 months of one engineering team, which was one of the squads, which were building this feature. They deliver it, and it kills the conversion. So pretty much you spend, I don't know, we can do the calculation, but it's like quite a lot of money on delivering the feature that it's not only that people do not use it properly, but actually for all the new users, it kills the conversion. So that was a big failure. Since then, we implemented all the processes, and then we moved to more robust ways how we establish objectives and so on and so on. But that was one. But there are probably more. This is just something that came up from top of my mind. Yeah, I mean, we have a wall in the office called the wall of failures. There is a lot of sticky notes there.
A wall of failures. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, every great journey requires some level of failure.
Yeah. Is that the real thing that you have, this wall with
Yeah,
stickers?
I think now it needs to be moved to another place, but there is, we do not put every failure there because small experiments are fine to fail, but like the bigger one where we either work on something, deliver, and if it fails, or we do some fuck up in communication or anything, this goes on the wall.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's a great culture.
How do you balance between experimenting and your big bets?
That's a great question. Well, we see experiments as a validation techniques. Simple as that. Before you go and bet your squad resources on delivering, working for, months or a quarter on building a feature, you need to validate it. So how you validate it, you do user interviews, you do like prototyping and so on, A/B testing. Well, there are a lot of validation techniques, right? So we see experiments as something that any product squad can run. Back when we had a growth squad, it also was run by growth squads. But we see experiments right now, we see them as a validation techniques. Obviously, once we will establish something that we want to establish back is growth squad. Experiments are essentially a way to grow. And I will be honest, we're not running as many experiments as we would like right now. If when we had a growth squad, we were running, I would say about 4 experiments per cycle, so 4 experiments per 2 weeks. Now we are roughly running maybe 2 per month. And,
that's not a lot, but to add to this, I have never met a person who would be satisfied with the number of experiments their team is running per week, quarter, whatever.
True. But since then we grew significantly. Now we have actually enough users to run way more experiments than we could have run back then, and we have now all the infrastructure in place, all the everything. But the problem that since experiments are being used as a validation techniques, they're designed a bit differently instead of just iterating for the sake of finding solutions quickly. Which is, I guess, the big difference between growth squads and product squads. Product squads are more eager to validate and then start building, whereas growth squads, they are actually living and eating experiments for breakfast all the time.
Oh yeah. And you always play around these shitty solutions that other engineers build. I had this joke in my previous team when we were grooming another task and coming up with, we used to have some shitty solutions in place in order to deliver it fast. We were like, okay, this one will be tackled by other engineers in the future. And and yeah, I remember their faces every time when we were back to this or that issue. Anyways, I think this is pretty it from our side. Yaroslav, do you have anything else?
Nope, that's a good talk. Thank you so much for joining.
Well,
I'm currently thinking of selling T-shirts as a side project. Pasha used to sell those 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah, you had
this experience.
Yeah.
If you guys decided to ping me, I will suggest you how to do it better.
Okay. Point
Sounds
taken.
good,
Thank
then.
you.
Cool. Thanks for joining us, Daniel. Thanks for listening. See you next Tuesday.
Thank you. Bye.